and run some hearing questions?
Yes, hi Walter. It's me, Jane Doe.
Oh, okay, perfect.
I've been staying on the line that I'm going to call you.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So real quick, I just want to let everybody know before we go into the next phone call that next week is going to be a little bit different, a little bit special. And how do I mean that? I mean that we're going to actually have somebody who works with the Social Security Administration, who is basically a hearing court clerk, hearing reporter that goes ahead and is in every single hearing for a judge of that particular day, and works with them through the hearing process. Somebody who gets to interact with the judges, interact with security, interact with their clerks, all that stuff. They're going to be actually live with me doing an interview next week at 8. So if you guys are interested in that, I'm certainly interested. We're going to get to hear what she has to say, things that you need to know. There's some other details that I think are really important that I want to go through kind of quickly with this situation, which is, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. When I went ahead and spoke with her, give me 1 second. Of course I can't. Oh, hold on. Maybe I can. Let me see. Nope. Okay. Never mind. All right. So throughout this, once I get the email again, I'm going to go ahead and look it up, find it, and then I'll let you guys know what questions she's going to be answering. And then at that point, you guys can actually have an SSA-related individual talking to you and explaining things. Now, as weeks go forward, we're going to have more people, more claimants that have already been found disabled giving interviews, other SSA-related people, could be a security guard, all those details, and let you guys experience them and hear what they have to say. So, other than that, Madame, are you ready to go ahead and begin the hearing? Go ahead and state your full name, your fake name for the record.
My name is Jane Doe.
Mm-hmm. Are you left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed.
Date of birth and current age?
My age is 36, and my birthday is December 24th.
Mm-hmm. So you said 36, is that correct?
36, yes.
36, okay, excellent. Now, help me out with this. What are your top 5 most severe impairments?
Depression, anxiety, I have agoraphobia, I have asthma, and I'm obese, and I have back pain.
Okay. Back pain is due to the obesity or something else?
I think so, yeah. And also the depression, too.
Okay. All right. What's worse, because, agoraphobia kind of, it's like anxiety. So what's worse, the anxiety or the depression?
The anxiety.
Okay. So let me ask you this. All right. Now, normally I would go with a different set of questions, but since we're doing this and I want to get right to it, let's go right into the anxiety-based questions. So how would you define your anxiety? What happens?
Oh my God. Well, back in 2012, my mother died, right? And I was working at this time. So I took a few weeks off when she died, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then, all of a sudden, one day, I woke up and I just couldn't leave my house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it started. And I'm going to start crying, but it's like, you don't know, I've been going through this since 2012.
Okay, gotcha.
And I did have a hearing back in 2015, but I didn't even go because my doctors kept telling me, you're not stable, whatever. And at the time, I didn't know nothing about disability. So I'm like, I'm not even going to go because they're going to say I'm not disabled.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been hospitalized and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't go, right? But then they said, she told me a lecture and she found me partially disabled back then, right? And so that happened. So then I had to reapply because she said that she stopped finding me disabled after, let me see, what year was it? After 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So fine. I said, okay, whatever. I closed the case out, whatever. And I applied again. And I had the hearing in December, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to my hearing with the judge and everything. And I spoke. I said what I said everything that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that the judge told the lawyer that she wants my records from, I think it was 2017.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
and or 2018, I don't know. I think she only had 2019 in front of her and 2020, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So then, okay, so she said, I'm going to keep the record open until January, so you can send me the records. And I haven't heard from my lawyer ever since that day. So I don't know if my lawyer sent the records or not. But I have a feeling she doesn't want to send those records. Maybe those records say that I'm not disabled or something.
Okay.
So then the lawyer sent me a letter in March 25th saying that she's still waiting for the record, and that if she doesn't receive the records in 15 days, that she's going to make a decision. But I haven't heard nothing ever since.
Okay. So, all right. Look, here's the thing. How do I phrase this? When I went 4 years ago, I was the attorney who was one of the guys fighting this whole get the records super cheap. Because in the end, it doesn't really matter if you get the records or I get the records. I just need the records to write the brief, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who gets the records. As long as somebody gets the records, I got to write my brief. I got to write my opening statement. I got to try and win the claim. Tomorrow.
She had that. She said her thing. And it sounded good, everything that she was saying. But I guess the judges wanted the previous year, because that's what my new claim is stating, that I'm disabled since 2017 going forward now. So that's why she wanted 2017. She only had, I think, 2018 or 2019 in front of her, the judge. Okay.
So one of the things that the judges usually like about what I do, and some of the judges are pissed off about it, is that I buy records back to 2010. So, and some of them are like, I don't want to see all that going back in time. And my response to that is, if you don't like it on TV, you don't have to watch the channel. You can click to the next channel. You can just go to the next file. They're all labeled. They all have the dates. Tomorrow at some point, call into my law firm. I'm going to give you what's called a patient-directed letter. You're going to go ahead and fill it out, send it to the facility, and then basically 3 days after you send it, you're going to call them every single day and ask them for an update on the sending of those records. Upon you receiving the records, you're going to go ahead and submit them to the attorney or the hearing office. In the meantime, while this is going on, you're going to call the hearing office and you're going to get their fax number, and you're going to fax them a simple letter that says it's going to take you longer than 15 days to obtain these records, but that you are currently working on obtaining these records. Okay, that will toll the judge's 15. Then I'll give you the patient-directed letter. You'll send that into them, and then they have to respond within 30 days with the records to you in digital format, whether it's emailed to you, it's on a website for you to download, or they mail you basically a jump drive or a CD or a DVD or whatever with it on it. Okay. So don't worry.
Do you think I should just ask my psychiatrist that I'm looking for these records to see what they say?
I mean, do you know the person that they're trying to get the records from?
I know the clinic because I go there every week.
Yeah, I would do that, and I would also submit to them this patient-directed letter. That way you basically have a federal request submitted to them, so that it's not just you going, hey, can you go ahead and send it? It's you going, hey, here's a federal request, you have 30 days. That way they have to get it to you within that time.
I remember the judge said something like that. She said that, because I said my doctors are very hard to give you any paperwork. They don't want to, they don't want to work with me, So she said, if I have to summon them to give me the record, I will.
So there's two things that the judges send out. God, I'm really bad at doing hearing questions with people, because then it just talks about how to fix the claim. So there's two things that the judges hand out. There's an 827 and then there's a subpoena. The 827 is a HIPAA request on behalf of the SSA, where they pay anywhere from $14 to $26, depending on which form they send out. So it's a HIPAA request 827. You can look it up just at Google, SSA 827, and boom, you'll see it. You've already filled out a couple, I'm sure. The other option is a subpoena. One thing you guys should know about Social Security disability judges is that when it comes to subpoenas, they don't really have any backbone power to them. And they don't usually exercise said backbone power. So what that means is that they can subpoena things, but they usually won't go after them thereafter unless it's an angry judge. And you have to work with the judge to show the judge why the judge should be angry, in which case the judge will have the head of that medical facility come down on a particular date, or they will hold them in contempt. So,
Okay.
so that's what happens if the 827 fails. Then it goes to a subpoena. All right. So let me explain a bigger picture. Before the hearing, the attorney has to submit all the documents within the 5-10-day rule. Within 10 days before the hearing, they have to notify the judge if they're having a hard time with the medical facility and whether or not they need him to subpoena it.
Yeah.
That was a terrible crap rule. When they made that, they weren't thinking. What it should have been was 5 days after the hearing that we have to notify them if we can't get the subpoena, if we can't get the records and we need them to jump in. But that's another thing. That was the SSA wasn't, they were sleepy and they put it out there and here we go. The 5-day rule was a good rule. So the 10-day rule, bad rule, 5-day rule was basically a rule. If there are any outstanding records 5 days before the hearing, good rule. That's a great rule.
I don't think my lawyer did, but she didn't say that.
Look, it happens. I had a claim this morning where so I had 2 claims today, right? Claim number 1, medical evidence. The most recent medical evidence wasn't in the file. And that's because when I bought the records recently, like I sent in a recent directive letter, they didn't send me all the records. And the claimant didn't give me an update as to, how long he's been going there, what months he's recently been there. So, because it was a federal document, I assumed that they were going to go ahead and send me the entire record. They didn't. And that popped out at the thing. So sometimes we won't have the entire record. Now that makes sense because they sent me a federal response that said, hey, here's the entire record. It wasn't. The second hearing, I had to use the 5-10-day request because I was not able to get from the facility those records. So now my back office staff wasn't able to go get them. So now I'm going to go threaten them myself and beat them up and file basically a federal violation against them by the HHS, Health and Human Services, under a HIPAA violation. So with that said, sometimes we don't have it in, but you better believe I had 5 days before that hearing, a 5-10-day notice in that said, hey, I don't have this record. Your attorney probably didn't have that, which is why she got in a little bit of trouble with the judge.
Yes, it is.
So that happens too. I mean, it is what it is. We process a lot of claims. I'm not throwing stones, maybe cute little coquina pebbles. So with that said, that's okay. Now you're going to go ahead. So let's say that your attorney can't get the records, because that's what it sounded like. It sounded like, we got so much time and we're running out of time. You're going to go ahead and submit this directive letter. You're going to notify the judge as to what's going on. My attorney is unable to obtain the records. I'm submitting a patient-directed letter. And if I'm unsuccessful within the next 10 days to procure those records, I'm requesting that you submit an 827 to the facility. And if the facility is unwilling to submit the records within 20 days, I'm requesting that you go ahead and submit a subpoena to the facility for the medical records. That's how I would handle it. That's how I think.
You don't think it's too late already, though? Sorry to interrupt. You don't think it's too late because she sent me this letter in March 25th.
No, it's not too late if you do it tomorrow. If you do it,
you think I should call the hearing office?
Yeah.
And tell them please give her this message for me.
Well, you're not going to be able to tell her because the clerk is going to be like, okay, we'll put it in writing. But the point is, get their fax number so that you can fax them something in writing immediately. Okay. And then call them back and make sure they got it and make sure that got the judge immediately.
I was thinking, let me just leave it like that because maybe there was a reason why my lawyer didn't want to send those papers.
Yeah, it's called laziness. Oh, I didn't say that. It's called, I don't know. You can make up a word. So, bottom line, I wouldn't approach this as like, it happened for a reason. Trust me, the judge wouldn't be asking for it if it was one of these. If the judge was like, okay, we don't actually need it, we're okay, we're going forward. That's one of those situations. This isn't one of those situations. When the judge says to the vocational expert, I have no additional questions, I don't need to know what additional jobs exist in the national economy. That's one of those situations where you shut up and sit there and go, something good is happening here. But what you're having right now is something that needs to be fixed. If you don't fix it, then it could be the reason for your denial.
I know, that's what I'm thinking. That's what she's going to use to deny me. But you know what? She asked for the hearing, she only asked 2 questions to the VE. One was how many jobs I have. I remember he said 1,000 jobs. And then the next question, she said, okay, what about if she's absent once a month? And he said, no, she can't do any jobs. She can't do these jobs that I mentioned. And that's it. My lawyer didn't ask no questions, and the judge didn't ask, do you guys have any more questions? No, that's it. It stayed like that.
They asked about your prior work. Did they say you could do
They said I couldn't do it.
Okay.
She said I couldn't do it.
What
She kept saying that, and
Yeah.
I remember.
What additional jobs did they say that you could potentially do?
They said kitchen helper.
Well, they said two
That was
more.
the job.
So what 3 jobs did they give? Kitchen helper and what else?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember kitchen helper. Something in the kitchen.
Ask the court when you
Oh,
call
yeah.
them for a copy of the disc that has the audio, or asked from the vocational expert or from the judge to the vocational expert.
2? She only asked 2 questions.
All right, so that's not a great sign, because if they said, look, they found hypo 1 was that you could clearly do those 3 jobs, and then hypo 2 was, well, if she's off, can only go 1 day, or she's off task 11%, can she still do the job? That's not a good sign. That's a judge leaning towards denial. So if the judge was asking about these 2017 records, it's probably going to make or break your claim.
Okay. So I'm going to give them a call tomorrow. Start working on this tomorrow.
Yeah, give them a call tomorrow, check in with them, see what basically, you can go ahead and do and get those records rolling. Give me a call, I'll send you that PDF so that you can go ahead and fill it out and send it to that facility. And keep in mind, I don't know who you are, and I can only give you a second opinion. And when I send you this PDF, it is in no way me trying to represent you by stepping on the toes of the other attorney. I'm not trying to do that.
Okay, I know.
Yeah, yada yada. So, all right. All right, let's run a few more questions, see how you do. So help me out with this. What was the last?
Famous. The government.
Mhm.
And I worked there for 11 years. And that was the job I left in 2012. And I haven't worked since 2012. But I've been in therapy since 2012.
Okay. So this is most likely an SSI only claim. Do you know what your date last insured was?
No, but they put down on my second claim into 2017 going forward.
Okay, interesting. All right, let me ask you this.
Because I closed the first case, the one that I was partially approved, I closed it out. I didn't go to the federal court. I didn't do none of that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so help me out with this. You were in a call center. How long did you work there?
11 years.
11 years. Okay, so that's good. So that gets us all the way before the PRW, which is the past relevant work period, which is 2005. So help me out with this. You were working there for an extended period. Things were going well. That's excellent. Walk me through this. So was this a full-time job or a part-time job?
It was full-time. And then another thing is that I have applied to work in another call center, work in the police call center, right? I took the test, and I was going to get the job and everything, but when I went for the psychiatrist test, I failed the psychiatrist test, and she asked me about that too. She said, the judge said, why didn't you take the 911 test? And I said, because I failed the psychiatrist test.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, why would you want to work in a 911 environment? Isn't that stressful? I said, yes, it is stressful, but I just want to help people.
Sure.
And she just looked at me like, I don't know, gave me a weird look.
Okay. So have you worked any little part-time jobs since 2012?
No. I'm a stay-at-home mother right now.
Help me out with this. When you were working there, were you a top employee? Did you win any awards, anything like that?
No, I was just an operator.
As you were an operator, walk me through, what would a regular phone call be like?
People that they have questions about, like, where do they pay parking tickets? What court they have to go to for any city government related questions that you have. Like, when is the sanitation going to pick up my trash?
Mm-hmm.
Or if people are calling that they have no heat or hot water in their apartment, I have to take a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Any government related.
So you have mental impairments nowadays, correct?
I'm sorry?
You have mental impairments nowadays, right? Anxiety, things like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
So this anxiety that you have, when did that start to become severe?
In 2012, when I couldn't leave my house anymore, and I just quit my job.
Okay. So in 2012, who's been supporting you since 2012?
I get child support from my kid's father, and I was on child support and full time.
Okay. So you're receiving these benefits. That's helped to keep you afloat. What health insurance do you have?
Medicaid.
Okay. And you have that because of the children, correct?
Yes.
How often are you in a mental facility receiving treatment for your anxiety, depression, and things like that?
Every week, and I was all week.
Okay.
Well, I couldn't make it really every week because, of course, I have many days that I just cannot leave the house. And that's the fun I was having with my clinic, that they don't want to hear that. They just want me to come in every week to get therapy. And what else? What was you saying? What was the question?
So what I'm looking for is how often you're going in for mental treatment. If it's around every week or every
week.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a really, really strong. Do you know what they're saying in their records? Have you reviewed what they were saying?
No, but you know that I have the disc of all my records, and I haven't looked at it because I don't have a computer.
What about going to the library?
I know. But if I don't leave my house, that's the problem.
Okay. So one of the big things I would have somebody do is go to the library, print it out, and see what records they actually have, because what's concerning me is that you might not have more than just those records missing from what's on that computer disk, which would suck. That would super suck. So the problem that we're facing here is that if you don't have a complete record and you go through this hearing, because your claim was presented by an attorney, there's no reason why you didn't have a complete record. And if you don't have a full and complete record when you go to appeals counsel, they're going to try and limit the documents that you can have going forward. So,
she also asked me, she asked me, when was the last time I was in the hospital? And I was in the hospital when was it? This year? No, last year, February, because I had a panic attack.
Okay.
But I wasn't hospitalized. They just took me to the hospital because I was having a panic attack.
Okay.
And I remember she brought that up in the hearing, the judge.
Okay. All right. So, all right. What I'm seeing with this claim. All right. So I'm going to ask you 4 hard questions. We're going to see how well you do with it. Hard question number 1. What medications are you taking? What are they for? And what side effects do you get?
I take Effexor 75 milligrams. That's for my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I take losartan for my high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I take a multivitamin. I take my asthma medication, my inhalers. Oh, and I was on another during the hearing. I was taking another medication. I forgot the name of it. Oh, God. It was a strong medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot the name of it. But I told the judge because I was taking it at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with the H. I forgot the name of it.
Okay, so starts with an. All right, so let's go through this real quick. So we don't know all of our medications. We're probably not totally sure what each one is for. And do we have at least 2 side effects per medication that we're ready to go ahead and?
Yeah, that's the same thing I told the judge. The medicine that I'm taking is so sleepy. So I'm tired all the time. Mm-hmm. I wake up and after 10 minutes of helping my daughter get ready to go to school, I'm tired and I go back to sleep. And I'm always sleeping because I'm so tired. Because I'm always drowsy with the medicine that I'm taking. Mm-hmm. And it's I have no energy to do nothing. I don't cook. She asked me also that what I do as soon as I wake up. And I said, well, I have to wake up my daughter to go to school. Even though I don't want to wake up, but I have to do it because if I don't do it, then they're going to call ACS on me because it has happened to me that they call ACS on me because I wasn't taking my daughter to school because I don't go outside. Okay. So I have to do it now, Okay. So I do that. I try to get ready in the morning. Mm-hmm. And she asked me if I cook in the morning. I said no because she eats at school, my daughter. So she said, what about your baby? Because I have a 2-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, we wake up. Well, we'll eat Oreos or something like that. But no, I don't cook. And sometimes her father brings us food, and that's how I really eat.
So you told the judge that you wake up and eat Oreos with your kids?
Yeah, it's the truth. I told her the truth.
Okay, that's fine. Maybe a little rough. Did you have a female judge or a male judge?
No, female judge.
Oh, God! Potentially. All right, so this is what I'm thinking here. I know that you had your hearing, so running more hearing questions with you isn't going to be a situation where it's kind of water over the dam. I know other people can learn from your answers and things like that.
I'm sorry, Walter, to interrupt you, but you know what else she did ask me?
Sure.
I traveled to Puerto Rico.
Sure.
And she asked me about that. She said that why did I travel? Because supposedly if I can't go outside, how did I travel? And I told her, well, the only reason why I did travel is because my family said that they were going to do a spiritual thing over there in Puerto Rico for my depression and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I told her that as well. That was the only reason why we traveled to Puerto Rico, to do that thing, to get rid of my depression.
Well, why do you think she was asking about where you traveled and why you traveled?
Because of that, because I said that I don't go outside, so how am I traveling, right?
Mm-hmm. Anxiety-based, and why physically did she ask about it?
To see if I could move around.
Well, to see how long you could sit while you were traveling. I'm sure you took a plane, right?
Yeah, but she didn't ask nothing about how long I was sitting. She just said that what was the reason for my travel. Mm-hmm. And I told her my family did like a spiritual healing for me, so to get rid of my depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha.
And I told her, I said everything how it is. I said the truth about everything.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. All right, so what we're looking at here, let's do this instead of me running questions with you, since you've already had your hearing. What things that were happening during the hearing struck you as odd that you have questions about?
You know what struck me as odd? That my lawyer said, okay, I'm going to ask you a question during the hearing, and I want you to say that you see things. Like I was telling her, sometimes one day I did see something pick up my daughter and throw her on the floor.
Mm-hmm. I
said that to my judge, and she said that she wants me to say that in court.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't ask me nothing in court. And then at the end of the hearing, I asked her, but you said you was going to ask me a question. She said, I didn't have to ask you because you already said it. But I don't remember saying it. Maybe I did say it, but to be honest, I don't remember saying that.
Okay. So
you did say it. You said that you see things, but to be honest, I don't remember saying it.
Okay, when you talked about, I'm assuming you talked about hallucinations during the hearing, correct?
I think it was that she was saying that I have to say I hallucinate.
Okay. Do you actually hallucinate?
I don't know if it was a hallucination because I did see something pick up my daughter and throw her on the floor, and she was crying afterward.
When you have these things happen to you, do you hear voices at all?
I do. I told her that I do hear a voice telling me that I'm so fat and I'm so stupid and I can't do this and that. I said that as well.
Are these voices, are they male or female?
Both.
Okay. What do the voices tell you?
That I'm stupid, that I'm fat, that I don't deserve to be eating food, that I'm a bad mother, that they're going to take the kids away from me.
Okay.
It's bad. And I said that to the judge too, that I'm so scared that he said he's going to take the kids from me because my doctors keep telling me that they're going to call ICS because I can't be saying things like that. I can't be saying I'm hearing things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I said that to the judge. She's like, oh, don't worry, nobody here is going to call ICS on you.
Tell me this. When you were in the hearing, how long did your testimony take?
Like 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Okay. Were most of the questions from the judge or your attorney?
The judge. My attorney didn't speak at all. The only time she spoke was at the beginning when they were saying a lot of codes and stuff, and she was giving the brief, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the judge was mostly talking to me.
Okay. All right. So things that I'm hearing that are worrying me. First and foremost, your attorney, it doesn't sound like, countered a lot of the questions that the judge asked. Is that correct?
No, she didn't. Correct.
All right. So the main reason you hire an attorney, aside from getting medical evidence, aside from getting forms in and doing all that junk, is to do basic. We don't really trust what the original answer was. We don't think the original answer was correct. Therefore, here's the more solidified answer. So let's say that, the first question that came from the judge was a question that said, okay, do you like music? And you're like, yeah, I love music. I love, going to music shows and big events and seeing things, and it's amazing. And, guitars, I can play guitars. And then your attorney comes in later and asks the question, when was the last time you were at a music event, a festival? Oh, it's been 10 years. When was the last time you played guitar? Oh, it's been 15 years. Do you currently own a guitar? No, I don't own a guitar. That would be the counter, right? So you have the initial line of questioning, and then you have the counter arguments to that. If you don't have an attorney bringing up counter arguments to what you were saying, you got a problem. So let me ask you this. What questions did the judge ask that made you feel like you answered something in a way that would be negative towards your claim?
When she asked me about the traveling. But you know what's the problem? That the lawyer told me that she was going to ask me that. She's like, she's going to ask you about your traveling, and she's going to ask you, like, what you do during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the lawyer the same thing. I told you that I did go to Puerto Rico for that, for the spiritual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they asked me that, the judge asked me that. And that was, what was the question they asked me again?
Were there things that the judge brought up that made it seem like you weren't as impaired as you actually are?
Oh, yeah, she said, I remember her saying, in my records it says that your doctors are telling you that they want you to go back to work. Why haven't you gone back to work? She said it like that. And I said, well, they're saying that? Like, I didn't know that. That's what my doctors were saying. I said, I don't know.
Okay. All right. So,
and she told my lawyer also, if the lawyer could ask me the question, because maybe I'm not understanding that question she's asking. Okay. But I really didn't understand, because I didn't know that my doctors are saying that they want me to go back to work.
How many people live in your household?
Just me and my two daughters.
What are the ages of the two daughters?
10 and 2.
Does a 10-year-old help you with stuff?
Sometimes.
Is the 2-year-old with a different father?
No, from the same father.
Is the father living around your location?
He lives in another borough. Well, he works around where we live, so I see him. Like, whenever I say I need a milk for the baby, he brings me the milk. Or if I say I need the Pampers for the baby, she'll bring me the Pampers. Thank God, Or, you know what else? She asked me, how do I get food? And I told her that I order my food, and they bring it to me from the store.
Mm-hmm.
Which is true. Or sometimes their father brings them food. My kid's father.
Okay. All right. I tell you what. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and then I'm going to pop off the phone because, what I want to do is I want to go over what the independent contractor is going to cover at the next live YouTube channel show. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Let me go into it a little bit. I'm going to beat you up, so don't think I hate you. I love you. I love you dearly. Let's go through it and kind of get this going. All right. First and foremost, let's go ahead and begin. Madame, can you go ahead and explain to me how long have you had your physical impairments?
The back pain?
Mm-hmm.
It's physical, right? I would say for the past 2 years.
For the past 2 years. Okay, when did you initially file?
Yeah, when did I file?
Mm-hmm.
It was in 2018.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you worked in you were filing in 2018. Your impairments started to come into play in 2018. How long have you had your anxiety, depression, things like that?
Since 2012.
Since 2012. You stopped working. You're receiving benefits in form of child payments from the father. What do those equate to per month?
I get like $1,200 for the child support, and I stopped the public assistance because if you get public assistance, they don't give you the child support.
Okay, so let me ask you this: when it comes to, obviously you're not getting child support. What's your rent every month?
1,100.
1,100. So if you're making $1,200 income and your rent is 1,100, how are you able to afford things like electricity, water, things like that?
The public assistance, they pay for my light. I don't pay for we don't pay for electricity. It goes with the light. I mean, we don't pay for the gas. It goes with the light.
Okay. Okay, and I'm assuming you get food stamps on top of that?
Yeah, I don't have cable. I don't have nothing. We just have, and my phone is from the government too. I have a government phone.
Okay.
So I have to pay for my phone.
Okay. Do you smoke cigarettes?
No.
Okay.
I don't smoke. I don't drink.
No. You don't drink? Okay. What about marijuana? Anything like that?
No.
Okay.
Hell no.
Okay. So help me out with this. So you're barely having enough after you pay rent. You're supposed to raise these 2 children. So walk me through this. If you have all these back problems, how are you able to lift the 2-year-old child and take care of her and help her get dressed?
One arm on the side, like dragging her almost.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I hardly carry her because of that. Like if I do have to carry her, like she's really crying, I have to drag her and carry her.
So these back impairments, they were really bad in 2018, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how old is your youngest child?
2.
Well, how are you able to go ahead and have a child in 2018 if you had really bad back problems?
I don't know, because at the time I was trying to get back with my baby's father, and I thought it was going to work out, but I can't be around people. Like, he has to be doing his life and I have to do my life. Like, he brings me more stress and more anxiety, knowing that I have to take care of him. And aside from my kids, so I can't be with him. Not until, like, I get better.
Now, there's a judge in Orlando who would have denied your claim right there because of that. Because if you're able to do the things that require making a child and then bear a child with all your back conditions around the same period as when they became bad, then that would be reason to not say that your back impairments are that bad. Okay.
I thought about that. I was like, if I'm going to be thinking, well, have you having kids then?
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go on. I'm going to beat you up a little more, and then actually we're running out of time. But here, I'm gonna do another question real quick. So walk me through this. What are some of the foods that you usually eat? I know Oreos. I don't disagree with that. I like putting them in the freezer and then I use them. Go ahead.
Oreos, we eat sandwiches. We eat frozen pizza. What else? We eat anything that I can just put in the oven to make that.
Mm-hmm.
We
Sure.
eat it.
Okay.
Like the frozen pizza. What else? Frozen chicken nuggets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything that I could be done like in 5 minutes. That's what I can't, because I can be really standing up for them. And plus, something tells me, no, you shouldn't be cooking because you're not a good mother to be cooking.
Help me out with this. What's the most complex meal that you make?
What's the most what?
Oh, say it again.
What was the question?
What's the most complex meal that you make?
When my daughter wants me to make her macaroni and cheese.
Okay. How many steps are it to make macaroni and cheese?
I have to boil the water. I have to wait for the macaroni to get soft. I have to rinse the macaroni. I feel like it takes forever to make. So that's and also another food that we realize cereal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you're making a lot of simple meals. Are you the one that does the laundry for all 3 of you?
Yeah, thank God I have a laundry washer in the house.
Okay. So walk me through this. When you do the laundry, do you also do your child's father's laundry as well?
No,
Okay.
only our laundry.
Okay. When you go ahead and when you pick up the basket and put the clothing in, do you use a big little bottle of soap?
Little bottle.
Little bottle?
And I keep the soap on top of the washing machine, so I don't have to worry about carrying it.
Okay. So when you lift the clothing in and drop it in and then you wash it, and then you pull it out of the dryer, where do you put the bin with the dried clothes thereafter?
I don't use a bed. We just throw the clothes on the floor. And when it's time to the laundry, I just pick it up and put it in the washing machine. And then when it's done, I just throw them on the sofa until I feel like I have a little bit of energy to start folding and putting them away. But it'll take me like a week to do that. Like start putting everything away. Mostly it just stays in the sofa, piling up and piling up.
Do you pick up all that clothing at once? Is that how you basically go ahead and move it to the couch?
A little bit later, I bring it to the couch.
Okay. Help me out with this. So when it comes to cleaning, I'm assuming you're the one that cleans the house.
Yeah. I have problems. I haven't like mopped my house in like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't. I don't have what do you call it? The energy, or if I start like deep cleaning like that, I wish I could do a real big cleaning, but I know like the next day my back's gonna be out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be out for like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
If I do a big cleaning like that. I wish I had somebody that would come to the house and help me do it.
What kind of a vacuum do you have?
I don't have a vacuum.
Do you use a duster?
I just have the broom.
Okay.
I have a broom and a duster, but I haven't broomed my house in like 10 years.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. All right. Let me ask you this: when it comes to, for example, having to pay bills, do you know how to pay bills? Do you have any issues with paying bills?
No, thank God. He's a father. He's the one that he's the one that pays my rent. Which is, I really don't even deal with money, because whatever money that he gives me, he really doesn't give me money.
Mm-hmm.
The money that is for the child support, he uses it to pay the rent. So I don't deal with no money. The only money that I could say I have is my food stamp. But I don't even use my card, because when I order food, they already have my food stamp card in the store. Like I have my keeper, so they take the stuff from there. Mm-hmm. My food.
If you receive the benefits, how would you use them?
I would love to get somebody to come and help me to take care of myself. Like somebody to wake me up every day and remind me to take a bath, to get my kids ready and take them a bath, help me clean the house.
Are you able to lift your 2-year-old in and out of the bath?
Not really, no.
Right,
She can do it herself.
Okay. All right, excellent. I've asked you a bunch of questions. Do you have any further questions for me?
No, just that. Thank you for telling me to call them tomorrow and try to get my own record.
Okay, good. All righty, well, Madame, it was wonderful meeting you. I'm going to catch up with you tomorrow, and make sure you give me a call, and then make sure you have an email ready for me to send the form over.
Okay, I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Okay.